Right, thank you so much. It's great to be here again. I think, when did we meet first time here at the UK Top Stanford? A year and a half ago, yes. Yeah, almost 2 years, yeah. And I think it took us about 15 minutes to decide to do something. And I mean, I'm extremely amazed by what Violetta and the networks around her have achieved in this short time. The program that I started in Sweden, and I mean, we've been going on now for 4 years, and I think that as things are developing here in Slovenia, you're really keeping an excellent speed and very competitive indeed. So thank you so much. I'm looking forward to collaborating a lot more with Slovenia, and I see that a lot of big things are going to happen here. And also, I'm very happy, obviously, about the prizes that now are going to be announced here today. And I'm working with the excellent people who will be getting these prizes. So let's see here. How does one? Is it this button? Yes. So this is the bottom line. For the innovation economy to be part of democratic society, independent journalism needs to cover that. That's the democracy aspect. And I think that really nobody has anything to object against this statement, otherwise you can stretch out the hand. Usually for something to be part of democratic society, independent journalism needs to cover. So that's the bottom line. Now let's go into the argument. Why is this relevant for you and me and everybody else in the European Union? Well, the other day, DG Research published a report saying that things are actually not going so well when it comes to European competitiveness. And they brought up some arguments, some of them are here, some others I added. Well, Europe is a shrinking part of the world population. The population is aging. Knowledge and competence is spreading across the world. The EU labour productivity growth is behind the US for the first time since World War II. And China and Korea are getting going. They now have 11% of the information technology patents in Europe. India is moving ahead. I was there a month ago or something like that. They're going to go for innovation, and they're going to be good at it. So this is a challenge. And EU set up aims to be the world's leading innovation economy in not so many years' time. That's the Lisbon process. They aren't living up to the benchmarks. Commissioner Tocznik is concerned about that. Now, society needs the ability to discuss solutions to this, and not only saying that it is a problem. Now, when we look at the news coverage of the EU, on Potocznik's statements and the report, it was simplified to EU is not spending enough on R&D. Now, I'm going to not tell the journalists what to write about here, because, okay, one can have that headline, one can have that story, but I'm going to try and make the picture a bit more complicated, and through this, tell you why I think innovation journalism is needed, with this as an example. Okay, so what is innovation? It's more than invention. It's the process of creating and delivering new customer value in the marketplace. Now, this is the commercial version of it, but it usually boils down to that at the end of the day. We know that it's the driver of economic growth. We know that it's the key word in economy. We know that it's not yet formally a keyword for news. It's getting more and more into the news, but if you go to AP and Reuters and say, send me a news feed on innovation, please, they say, sorry sir, we don't have that keyword. So you have to use other keywords for getting your news feeds. A very conservative system. So this, of course, impedes local newspapers, other newspapers to have pages on innovation, because usually they subscribe to some news feed from a news agency where they can push in stories on that page when they don't write them up themselves. However, this is with the innovation in journalism, I'd say that point 3 is sort of developing. Yes, how about that? Here, there was supposed to be a picture. What was here is that we usually have a linear vision of what innovation is. That first you have some funding committee, you put in money into basic research, and that produces knowledge that goes into applied research, and then the applied research goes into R&D, and from R&D comes product development and commercialization, and voila, you have innovations on the market. And that this is often seen as a well-oiled machine, where you trim the parts so that you get a good flow through. Not so. It's much more complicated than we think. Actually, you have backflows between these steps all the time. And you know, you can even have backflows several steps in a row. And it iterates, and in the end of the day you get some application that wasn't at all intended from the start. When I was a physicist, back in the 80s, in our department we had a Nobel Prize winner who liked flashy things, so he bought a laser pointer. Back in '84 they were about this big, and it was really a large laser. And everybody at the department was just laughing about it and said, you know, ironic things like at last somebody found a useful way of using a laser and stuff like that. But of course, laser pointers were an innovation. They were not exactly what they'd been intended for, but they were an innovation and everybody uses them today. So I think one has to be a bit humble and realize that most of the usable applications are stumbled upon the way. Also, innovation happens in a rather complex system. You have business that earns money on it. You have the government that influences through setting up the legal frameworks and the laws around it, and incentive structures and whatever. We have academia that provides mainly, I'd say, educated people to go into industry and government. One talks a lot about tech transfer from universities and so on, but we should realize that most of that tech transfer actually goes through individuals who leave the university, students, and then take jobs in other places. So, of course, in a good innovation system, the government supplies a good regulatory framework and good funding for academia and something that fits business, and that academia has relevant educations for equipping business and government with the right people. And then you will have a successful innovation system. But this is very complex. Because these different guys, they usually live their lives on their own. You all know that. Now, how do they communicate? Well, they don't communicate as much as they should. And when they communicate, it gets much more difficult than it ought to be, because they have different business models, they have different cultures, they have different salaries even that so if somebody from academia goes over to business and gets a career there, they will probably not go back to academia because they don't want to have a lower salary, stuff like that. So one way, the question is then, where do we build up the collective consciousness of the system? Where do we bring up the questions that all of these groups talk about at the same time, and with knowledge that they can have opinions about and share with each other? Well, the news is actually the major source of this. And, you know, Anna Nicole Smith, when she was around, used to be very often in the news all around the world. And I just feel that they could make just as good stories about what goes on in the field of innovation with just as interesting people, and probably that would raise the quality of discussion in the system. Yeah, so this is the bottom line then, that to have an innovation system, it's not a smooth system, it's not a factory line for innovation, it's lots of independent actors, and you have flows of technology and information and capital among these guys, and that builds up innovative processes. Here is my suggested addition to the innovation system concept, and this is actually a completely new concept. It's been written about a bit in one paper so far. I'm going to develop it further on. I suggest that there's a subset of the innovation system which we can call the innovation communication system. And where in the innovation system we talk about flows of technology, information and capital. In this subset we will talk about the flow of attention, because the innovation system, it's all about transferring new ideas, and there are lots of competing new ideas, and they can't all of them get attention. There's a lack of attention in the innovation system. So when there's a lack of that, of something that's needed, there's a market for it. So there's a market for attention in the innovation system. And therefore, I would like to introduce something you all heard about, knowledge workers. I'd like to introduce the label attention workers. And these are then the workers that generate and broker attention for a living. They can of course generate knowledge as well, but the thing is they generate and broker attention for a living. That's what puts food on the table. Right? So they have journalists, PR and communicators, lobbyists, marketers. These are all professional groups that do that. And they fit pretty well into each other. They form a rather nice playing field together. And I encourage you to think about political systems where this is in action. And I think that this is relevant also for the innovation ecosystems. And I think that this is a useful concept for thinking about flows of attention that control the flow, the other flows of technology and information and capital. And this way actually will steer directions of flows in the innovation ecosystem. I'd like to also make the similarity between the democratic system and the innovation system. Again, sort of from the democratic point of view, that these are actually very similar. It's all about competition between ideas and people backing these ideas. And they form alliances, create conflicts, and fight for attention. The difference is maybe that the winners implement their ideas on society through making laws and controlling the tax money in the top part. And there it is that the winners implement their ideas on the market. But it's pretty similar. There the power is with citizens' votes, there's power is with citizens' money. In democratic system, we all know we have to have free journalism in order to have democracy. It's a must. I'd say that there's an enormous opportunity for innovation journalism there to actually bring the innovation ecosystem more into democracy, and it's also a very attractive niche for journalism. They become power players by taking that niche in the innovation system. Also note that as we are going into the innovation economy, power is kind of moving over slightly from the lawmakers to the innovators. I mean, in the olden days, I'd say that, when the world invented the CD record, it kind of followed the rules and regulations of the intellectual property and copyright laws that were set up by the lawmakers. When the internet came in the 90s and MP3 music was introduced, these guys were in the lead, and those guys have to follow afterwards and try to tidy up. So the power over our futures, in that case, moved over from the democratic system to the innovation system. Now there are examples too, like generally media industry, television, whatever, is moving over from the lawmakers to the innovators more and more, which makes it important that the news about what's happening in the fights here between the key actors gets into our daily news so we can discuss it. I'm going to try to speed up it. So, innovation journalism then is defined as journalism covering innovation processes and innovation ecosystem. It covers how innovation happens. It's not, sometimes people think it's about journalism about new gadgets. Well, that's can be in there too, but the key point is about the process of innovation. And here is also what makes it into a power player in society, and that's that it gives us new words. No. Innovation is the introduction of something new, okay? That's Oxford Learner's Dictionary, I actually like that definition. And innovation journalism can introduce names for new things and also introduces new words for discussing the innovation ecosystem. Here we go. Innovation requires introduction requires communication. You can't introduce something without communicating. Communication requires language. Something new needs a name in order to be discussed. The news spreads the new words so that new things can be discussed and introduced. And the special case is that innovation journalism gives actually the language for discussing how innovation happens in society, which gives us the ability of speeding up the process, optimizing the process of how we do innovation. So it gives us the language so that we can talk about things in the same way as we can talk about Anna Nicole Smith. We might be able to talk about how we might have the words to discuss how innovation happens to do, and have a mechanism for introducing new words through fighting, of course. Okay, so new as a concept and community, not new as a practice. Even Edison was dependent on, journalism and was very helpful. I coined the expression in 2003. I made a Google search in October 2003 and actually did it on innovation journalism, business journalism, and technology journalism. And while there were many thousands of hits at that time on business journalism and technology journalism, the word combination innovation journalism actually gave 0 hits at that time. So I took that as an assumption that nobody had really seriously tried to introduce this word combination before, which actually surprised me very much. Well, if you want to talk about the process and about the innovation before, then it's this combination you have to look at. You have to go across the beats. It's business and the technology and the politics and culture of journalism. And if you do that, then you can start discussing the bigger picture. And you can start evaluating what's going to happen. And you can also start scrutinizing the systems that, the actors in the systems that make that happen. I think lots of people, maybe in an unnecessary way, lost their money in the last bubble on stories that should have been seen through. This is the traditional newsroom. It has a science desk, a tech desk, sometimes they're the same, business finance desk, politics desk, culture desk. The newsroom is today a product line organization that produces stories to be put in these different sections. So innovation is covered in this way and put in stories in different sections. This means that it's a bit difficult to cover the big picture in a traditional newsroom organization because these editors don't want to get into fights every day about what goes, that they're stepping on each other's turf and so on. So this is a bit difficult to do, and very much about the program that we have at Stanford, which is a collaboration between Vinova and Stanford, I should say, because it started off as a Swedish Vinova program, it still is run as a collaboration. The issue is how to generate the mindset among journalists that crosses the routes. Another thing which is important now is that people are giving a lot of attention to innovation in journalism, which is, of course, a different thing from journalism about innovation, which is innovation journalism, but they do hang together. When I was a computer journalist once upon a time, in the beginning of the 90s, we had a competing magazine that was about Windows. And the Windows magazine in Sweden at that time was made by journalists working on typewriters. Now, that does seem a bit silly. And I'd say that in the same way, it's probably very difficult for a very traditional news organizations, because many of them are very traditional, to sit in an environment where you know for 100 years how to do your job, and new things are very difficult to get in and so on, and then your job is to cover how new ideas are introduced in other organizations. I think that will be difficult. So I think definitely that these belong together. So we like to separate these two, but we say that they belong together. Now, we have the fellowship program, and I'm overjoyed that we're going to be having more interaction with Slovenia here. This is what we had this year at Stanford. It's run by Innova and Stanford together, and contains workshops and conferences at Stanford, virtual community. We have we are hosting newsrooms, so like, for example, Wall Street Journal, Business 2.0, San Francisco Chronicle, and all these guys. They are hosting innovation journalism fellows each year. And then they stay in touch with each other through the newsrooms and the activities at Stanford. Example of a story that one of our fellows did for a host was this one: blogs grow up, ads on the sites are taking off. It's actually the first story that was run in Wall Street Journal about that blogs were getting ads. And a very important story as such, because it was actually the first story about this enormously big thing that now is happening in the news industry, that the newspapers are getting competition for ads from basically their own readers. Here's the conference, and Violetta is going to tell a bit more about it. Yes. Well. Okay, we're also starting off some research around this to bring this into the field of innovation research, because innovation research, the research that is done today on how innovation happens, has so far not addressed the role of mass communication, not as a theme. In single papers here and there, yes, but not as a theme. So we got together a number of different researchers here at Stanford a year ago, and we made a small, we can call it like a manifesto or suggestion or something like that. That we suggested that innovation journalism is a useful theme for exploring the interplay of journalism and innovation ecosystems, that can look at how innovation processes and innovation ecosystems interact with public attention and public interest, I should add, with news media as an actor. And it can also look at how journalists cover innovation processes and innovation ecosystems, including the incentives that drive innovation journalism, and how news organizations may be organized to perform the task. And with building this, I think we actually are creating this like triple helix around this topic, so that we will have practitioners working on developing innovation journalism in their practice. We will have researchers looking at how this is best done and analyzing it. And we have interaction with various funding bodies, including government like Innova or TIA has given grants and so on, in sort of the best practice of supporting the development of this. And we're also looking forward to doing this more with the European Union. So that's it. I should also say that so far, this is spreading around the world, and apart from Slovenia, it now is also in Finland has a well-developed program. The European Journalism Center in Maastricht has a program, and they are actually running a workshop on this in Amsterdam Summer University in July. Really Written is going to tell you more about this in the video. There is a program in Pakistan, actually founded by the USAID, who sees the synergy between economic development and competitiveness, which they deal with, and having journalism able to cover. We have several other countries on the go where there is interest. We have a delegation from Estonia to the conference and so on. So we will be setting up a committee for, like an international committee, where Violeta will be representing Slovenia and people from other countries as well, to sort of bring coordination and an international approach to this. So with that, I thank you very much, and I see that much more important people than I have come here, so I'll leave the stage, and looking forward to discussing this further with you in the pauses during this conference.